Ever since we started this channel 2 years ago, the most popular series that we've done has been producing country music with Anderson Elswick. And a lot of you have asked us to do more content featuring country music. And so today, we're going to give you exactly what you've asked for. And we are going to record some country vocals for one of my favorite clients, Miss Sydney Adams. I'm going to show you everything. The microphone, the signal chain, the outboard gear, how I'm setting my compressors, and it's all going to start right now. All right, so first things first, let's talk about the microphone. This is my Lawson L47 tube microphone. It's a clone of the Neumann U47 tube, and it's handmade by Gene Lawson in Nashville. And it's got kind of a cool and unique design in that you don't have to have a shock mount with this microphone because the capsule is actually shock mounted inside of the microphone. And one of the other cool things about this microphone is that you can actually, the capsule unscrews from the top of the microphone, and you can get a 251 capsule if you want to, and he also has the same thing for his FET 47. You can interchange it. So it's a very, very cool microphone, and it sounds fantastic for vocals. So we've got this set up out here, and you can kind of see the walls and the panels behind me. This room is 30 feet by 50 feet, and the ceilings are really, really high. But for a project like this, my preference is actually to have the vocal be a lot tighter. And so we made these big moving gobos. They have 4 inches, the two side ones have 4 inches of Roxul on in them, and then a layer of drywall and a layer of plywood, and then they're in 1x6s, and then this back one actually has 12 inches of a blend of Roxul and just regular insulation. They're covered in burlap, and it really makes the room sound a lot tighter. The camera mic is probably picking up a little bit of the ambience of the room, but putting these panels up definitely helps the microphone to capture a lot tighter of a sound, and then I can add delay and reverb when I'm actually mixing the song. The other thing that is going to help your singers just perform really, really well, in my opinion, is to make sure that they have really great monitoring. So every time that I go to record vocals, I'm trying to make sure that the mix sounds good for them, and they also have a little bit of control over it. And for that, I like to use the Hearback. And we'll cut in some sexy B-roll of that thing. But the Hearback allows me to send a mix of the instruments. It lets me send my talkback. It lets me send the click track. And it lets me send the artist's vocal all down separate channels. And then I just label it very simply so that they can dial in those knobs the way that they want them while they're out here. And every once in a while when you do that, sometimes you're going to have somebody that says, oh, I can't hear what I want to hear. And so it's not uncommon for me to leave the control room and get up and come out here to the live room and then plug my own headphones into it and just kind of play back the mix and listen to what they have, because sometimes they'll just need a little bit of extra help adjusting things to get it right. But you want them to be able to hear themselves accurately, you want them to be able to have good pitch reference of the track, and you want them to be comfortable and to be able to hear things at the level that they want to hear things, and I think the Hearback accomplishes all of that. All right, let's head into the control room and we'll talk about the outboard gear that we're using with Sydney's voice. All right, so now that we've got our vocal mic set up, it's time to start getting some signal into Pro Tools. And so what I want to talk about is the whole signal chain, just to show you what I'm using. This isn't so much a tutorial as it is kind of documenting the process of how I do things and giving you some insight into the way that I do things, so that maybe that will help you figure out what is going to work for you. So first and foremost, we've got to have that microphone signal go somewhere, and it's got to hit a preamp because mic signal is really, really low, and I'm going to use some outboard gear on the way in to my DAW, and I want to get this signal up to line level, and a mic preamp is how we're going to do that. That's why you always have to have a mic preamp. Now, if you're using something like an Apollo or a Scarlett or some sort of audio interface, the mic only has one place to plug in on that most of the time. There are a few interfaces that have line level inputs so that you could use some outboard gear with it, but for most people that are buying their interface, you know, in the under $1,000 range, you're going to have preamp inputs that have an XLR jack, and you're going to plug that microphone straight into there, and then you've got a gain knob right on the front. My interface is an Antelope Orion 32 HD. It just has 32 line level inputs and 32 line level outputs, so I've got to use a mic preamp. And sometimes we use the ones here on the desk, and sometimes we use the ones over here in the rack. And when I'm recording a country vocal, I'm going to start with the ones over here in the rack because I really like the 7th Circle N72. It's my favorite for electric guitars almost always. It's my favorite for vocals, and it's my favorite for the kick drum. I like it because you can get a little bit of distortion, but it's got the trim knob on it that you can roll back so that you can keep it from hitting your next processors too hard. After that, I'm going to run into the Purple Audio MC77, which is an 1176 style compressor. Now, when I first started tracking vocals, I was super afraid to track with any compression at all. I was afraid that I was going to mess it up, and then I would spend all this time trying to record a good sounding vocal, and it would be something that was unusable later on. And to tell the truth, the first couple of times that I used a compressor, I did overbake it. I had one of these, I think it's called an RNC. I can't remember who makes it, but it just stands for really nice compressor. They're like a 1U half rack sized unit, and they are pretty cool. You can get them for a few $100, maybe even less than $300. And I had one of those compressors, and I also had a Presonus RC500 channel strip. Those were my first couple of pieces of outboard gear, and the first couple of times I tried to use them, they did not sound good at all, and so then I ended up just having them sitting in my rack for probably 6 months, just unused, before I finally sold them. And so I would say that if you're going to start using outboard gear, you really need to dedicate some time to practicing with it and using it, because it does respond a little bit differently than plugins. I find that when I'm tracking with an 1176, I can usually go, 15, sometimes even 20 decibels of gain reduction depending on what the source is, and with a vocal you can go really, really hard, and it's not uncommon to hit, especially on a hard peak, to hit 18 or 20 dB of gain reduction, and it sounds fine. But if you do that with a plugin, sometimes it can sound like it's falling apart, or that it just doesn't, it's just not doing the compression right, and it's pretty obvious that it's being compressed. These compressors, they can sound pretty transparent, and so I usually use 2 compressors in series, and so the 1176 will be the first, or the Purple MC77, I guess I should say. That'll be first, and I'm going to set that to a 4:1 ratio, and I'm going to set it at a pretty fast attack, but not as fast as it will go, and I'm going to set the release nearly as fast as it will go and kind of slowly back it off to get the feel that I'm looking for. After that, I'm going to patch straight into my Audioscape Opto comp, which is pretty much an LA2A, and it's really, really good sounding. Before I had the Audioscape, I was using a distressor in Opto mode all the time, and again, it was not uncommon for me to see 7, 8, 10, 12 dB of gain reduction pretty regularly on a vocal, and if it was something that was a rock thing that I was getting really aggressive with, add a little bit of distortion from that distortion knob and really crank hard on it, and would get sometimes 16, 18 dB out of the Opto mode on the distressor, and also getting 10 to 15 dB gain reduction on the 1176, so almost 30 decibels of gain reduction sometimes on a vocal being tracked, and it sounds fine. It sounds really, really good. But to be able to be that confident and be able to do that much compression on the way in and commit to it, you've got to know what your gear sounds like, and it takes a lot of practice. And so that's the first thing. If you're going to track country vocals, they've got to be big and they've got to be up front, which takes a lot of compression, and they've got to be right. You don't want to be adding compression with the wrong attack and release times, and then it ends up sounding very, very sibilant. We want to make sure that we're pushing that stuff to the back, not bringing it to the front. And so this is some roll right here of my settings that you can see here that we used today while we were tracking Sydney's vocal. And so I guess it would do us no good if you can't see and hear some of what it sounds like. I want to go ahead and jump into Pro Tools and let you see Sydney singing into this microphone and hear what her raw takes sound like. The song is not finished yet. We still have a long ways to go on it. It's probably going to end up getting some keyboards. It's probably going to end up getting, for sure going to end up getting some pedal steel by my good friend Smith Curry. And so let's go ahead and listen to what that sounds like.
Money in my pocket, if I ain't spending on cigarettes. Sinners like me have to try a little harder just to stay on the right side of their road. Yes, I have always been a fighter. Sinners like me are always singing the same damn song.
All right, so there you go. Now you've been able to see and hear everything that we do to set up a vocal while we're tracking it. You've seen how much gain reduction and the settings that we're using. The only thing that's left for you to do is to track your own vocals and to experiment. You know, that's a big part of this, is getting the experience that's required to be able to record a vocal like this and to be able to use this equipment. But I think that if you start doing this for yourself, you're going to benefit a lot from being able to use a compressor on the way in, and there's a ton of good ones. You know, these are expensive, but you don't have to start there. There's some great 1176s, and I did a review of the KT76 from Clark Technic. You can watch that here, and for most normal compression settings, it sounds really good and sounds very 1176y without being as expensive as the purple is. So go and check that video out, and if you like what we're doing here on the channel, please go ahead and subscribe to Capsule to Cone. Hit that bell notification so you know when our next video is coming out, and give us a like for the YouTube algorithm. Thank you for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.